Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Gillian Rightford. I'm the Interim Executive Director of the ACA, the Association for Communication and Advertising. And we are the owners and runners of the Effie Awards in South Africa. I see lots of familiar people on the participant list, so welcome. Thank you for your time. Thank you also to Ipsos and to our own team for setting this up and for putting it all together in what I hope is going to be an interesting and informative session. So most of you on here know that the Effies is the golden standard for marketing effectiveness. It has been so globally for 25 years. And we can see that it is achieving the same measures of success and recognition in South Africa, and we're very pleased to continue that. So as we know that creative effectiveness is obviously no longer a contradiction in terms of the modern marketing sector, we can see time and time again what makes good ROI, and the Effie case study format is a very good way of unpacking a campaign and explaining all the component parts. What Ipsos is going to take us through today is just some learnings from their own research into creative effectiveness from their Misfits framework, and then how they've applied that to various Effie Award winners, both in South Africa and Best of the Best. And the reason we wanted to share this with you today is that we are wanting to help people write the best possible cases that they can. I will show you that the award entries are open, and we're wanting you to be able to write the cases in a way that the judges will be able to see the effectiveness and to hopefully award you with the recognition you deserve. So in preparation for the webinar I did on how to write a winning case study, I have been a judge before. I have not written a case study before. I reached out to various judges and to various people who had written award-winning case studies before. And before we kick off, I am going to hand over to Quentin to take you through from an Ipsos point of view. But first, we're going to listen to the words of one of our judges, Danny de Nobrega from Kilmer and Cruz, who had 4 very important tips for people to consider in writing an award-winning case study. And I think what is interesting about the deck, which we will share with you, that Ipsos has prepared, is it goes beyond writing an award-winning case study. It goes to how do you create more effective advertising. So see this as an insight into previous winners. See this as an insight into some of their own creative effectiveness learnings, and also see this as information and knowledge you can apply to your advertising, whether it's an Effie award entrant or not, but in an attempt to make it as effective as possible. So I'm going to hand over now, listen to Danny's words, and then Quentin will take you from here. Thank you very much.
Let me tell you about the 4 C's in crafting a compelling Effie Award case study. Hi, I'm Danny de Nobrega, co-founder and creative strategist at Kilmer & Cruz Advertising. I've been very fortunate to be an Effie Award South Africa judge since the show's inception in 2021. Over the last 3 years, I've learned a few things that will help you craft a compelling case study to give your ideas at work the best chance at winning the medal it deserves. The power of an idea or creative execution can often see it easily win across multiple categories in other award shows. The Effies are a little different as it's focused on effectivity, so choosing the right category for your project is absolutely essential. Be sure you understand the categories and craft compelling case studies according to each category. Your Effie Award case study entry will be built around 4 sections, and the strongest ones we've seen has a clear golden thread that connects all of them, from your objectives to your insights and idea, creative execution, and ultimately your results. And while each 4 sections will be built and scored individually, it is absolutely vital that it has one story or golden thread that pulls through and connects the one to the other. When writing your case study, use language that's clear and simple to get your message across. The best ones we've seen often use an encyclopedic type language. Think Wikipedia. Leave the hyperbole for the agency press release. You're investing time and money to tell the world about your ideas at work. So put in the care and craft to create a compelling case study. This is not one to ship off to the juniors to have them rehash the strategy deck or the client presentation. Put in the hard work to best show off your campaigns that worked hard. And remember, good grammar and copy check goes a long way. I hope you have some fun putting your case studies together. Best of luck to all the Effie Awards South Africa 2024 entries. Let's keep celebrating ideas that work.
Danny, thank you. Good morning, everyone. And Gillian, thank you for hosting us, and thank you for inviting us, and thank you for everyone who's joining us. I know to carve out time in the diaries is always a little bit challenging, but thank you for making the time. What we're going to share, it will definitely be useful to you, and we hope it will inspire you to challenge conversations within your teams, but also with your clients that you're having. So just as a way of introduction, as Gillian introduced me, my name is Quentin. I'm part of the Creative Excellence team at Ipsos. And what we do in this service line we call Creative Excellence is really we partner with clients and creative agencies on the creative journey and help them to create, optimize, and evaluate wherever they are on the creative journey to help them create ads and communication pieces that are really impactful and powerful. And just to give you a little bit of a insight about Ipsos, as Gillian mentioned, we are the research people. If you wondered, you might see us a lot now on TV. A lot of my colleagues are speaking about politics, but the work I focus on is really.
So I'm saying hypnotism is when you make someone like.
I think there's a mic that's on. Thanks. So Ipsos, just to give you an idea, we've been around for more than 40 years. We're based in over 90 countries. And really what we focus on is behavioral neuroscience and data sciences. And in the space of advertising, what we really take pride in is the strategic partners we've built up over the years. We've produced a lot of point of view papers, but also we've set up partnerships with the likes of Contagious, Can, See Her, as well as that's a super interesting one. And later in the presentation, I will refer again to See Her. And if you are not aware, See Her, it came from the ANA and the female quotient in the US. They came together to produce what they call the GEM score. It's the gender equality measure. And it's all about how women are represented and portrayed in media and advertising and measuring that. Like super interesting work that they're doing. And we are actually one of the first research houses to incorporate the GEM score in all our reporting. And what brings us today as well is our partnership with Effie. It's a partnership that we have in many countries, including South Africa now. And the role that we play with Effie is we help produce the insights reports, to help distill the learnings and insights. And the relationship with Effie, it's been something that we've established over a number of years ago. And it's really around what we have in common. And that is what's drawn us to Effie. It's that we have a shared language that we speak around what we think around effective advertising and what effective advertising should really do. And we really speak about, ideas that work are those that are, built around passion and insight and rigor, but with a clear focus on effectiveness. And Gillian has touched on a book we created. We call it Misfits, but more than beyond a book, it is actually a framework that helps us in every day to understand, what are the levers that we can use in advertising to make sure it's more impactful and powerful. And in producing the book, we were very lucky that Tracy Alford, the global CEO for Effie, also she actually wrote the foreword for the book. And as you can see, that great quote from her, Misfits really helps us to unpack the business of creativity and marketing right now, but it also makes a compelling case for ideas and gives us practical insights on how to create them. And I will briefly take you through this framework that we call Misfits, which really the goal was that it's not something that lives in the book, but it's something that everyone can use on a day-to-day basis within their teams and in the work that they do. So if you're wondering, how did we come to Misfits? And really the origin for Misfits for us, it started early at the Cannes Festival a few years ago, when there was conversations around what is creativity and a definition of creativity. And what we saw, what we labeled here as the creativity gap, is that we saw people were really, especially CMOs, they felt very confident in the power that creativity has in driving business effectiveness. But that confidence we saw filtered down and was diluted when they had to go to business and Exco to ask for money to invest in these ideas. And when we looked at it, that really inspired our thinking around, how can we have tools and advice for clients and agencies around the business value that creativity can bring. And on that journey, when we were looking at what are the data points out there and what are other people are saying out there, what we saw is there was a lot of different definitions going around creativity. People were speaking about things are disruptive, they challenge, they brave, they bold. But that's where we also saw, a lot of definitions from different people and agencies, but there was not really one definition around creativity that everyone could speak to. And when we looked at it, we also thought, what are everyday people that we are creating these ads for saying around creativity and what it means to them? And this is where our journey really started. We went to consumers in an open-ended question. We asked them, tell us a creative ad that you saw, explain it to us, what it looked like, it sounded like, so we can understand. And the responses we got were very diverse and broad, but also illuminating, because it really gave us the chance to understand what creativity means for everyday people. And one of the interesting things that we learned is that originality, represented by being unique and different, was a significant part of their perception of creativity. But apart from that being unique and different, we also saw different experiences that they referred to. They were speaking about needing it to be fun and entertaining, speaking about giving me new information, and also, feelings around something that's interesting and joyful. And this helped us then to come up with a new definition, and it's a definition that we use at Ipsos around creativity. And it's an original or different experience that deliver a value to our audience. And this is really what we saw came out through the studies that we did. So once we had all of this in hand, we then also said, how do we make sense of all of this? And what role and interaction do all of these things have with each other? So with this information in hand, we went to our sales validated tool and we put in this information. We did some regression modeling, and what we could identify, and this is the brain you can see on the screen, we could see that creativity is really centered around creative experiences, empathy, fitting in, and creative ideas. And just to give you like a brief overview of, how it comes together and how it interplays, what we saw is, experiences that people will talk about that is unique. Those are the ones that really feel memory encoding, much more stronger than creative ideas and empathy on its own. The second part of it, in terms of the brain, the creative ideas, those ideas are the ones that really build long-term equity for a brand, because we know people gravitate to the safe and the familiar, but with giving them something new information about the brand that's being informative is really, we see the results. It really builds long-term brand equity. So the third piece, and this was the really interesting part of the whole study that surprised us and still surprises people, that is super interesting. It was creativity on its own is not enough to drive business end effects, but it's really when you bring in the magic ingredient of empathy that you can see a 20% shift and a stronger performance in your ad. And that really comes to the whole idea around, you know, the idea, is it resonant, is it relevant, you know, do people find it's for people like me, can they resonate with the ideas I mentioned? So it was really the magic. And hopefully, you know, if I'm going to share a few learnings today, but one of the key learnings I hope that you will walk away today with as well is really the powerful impact of combining creativity and empathy together. That's really where the magic happens. And just to show you in this illustration of how what I mentioned is, you know, we measured the impact of the different elements and how it interplays. As I mentioned, it is our sales validated tool. So we could really see, experience that speaks to people and that's unique. It's really strong with shifting your metrics on brand attention and building brand attention. And your creative ideas, you know, it's telling me something new. Is that building that brand desire? There's a strong correlation with that and a direct impact on that. But it's also, there is an impact also on short-term choices and short-term equity. And as you can see in the middle with empathy really has got a direct impact and on shifting your metrics on short-term choices and long-term choices. And just to mention as well, just because we labeled it misfits doesn't mean it really has to be disruptive just to be for the sake of disruptive, right? It is about challenging category norms, you know, being different and unique, but again, coming to that understanding of providing value to your end audience, but with empathy and creativity in mind. So that's a brief overview of, you know, our framework that we call Misfits. And at this point, we're going to turn it over to you, and I would like you to hear from you. I'm going to show you two ideas, and whether you think it's a miss or misfit, and there's a prize. There's a prize. There has to be a prize. So as we mentioned, we did release the framework and how we came to the framework in a book format. So I've got 3 copies of the book that I can pass on to our winners. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you 2 ads. And after the ads, I'm going to show you a multiple choice question. And then you can just punch in the answer in the chat. And Snare will help you with that. And then we'll quickly chat about it. So here's the first one.
I believe so much in the mission of Beyond Meat that I've stepped in to help with my greatest asset, my taste. This plant-based meat is not only amazingly delicious, but it's also better for you and better for the planet. It's a simple change that makes a really big difference. And now that I'm Beyond Meat's chief taste consultant, there's never been a better time to go beyond.
All right, that was the first one. So
I believe so.
Here we go.
I have a Kit Kat. I have a Zen leaf. Yokubari double. I have a Kit Kat. I have a Zen leaf. Yokubari double. Yokubari double. Yokubari double. Yokubari double. 欲張りダブル新登場
So here we go. It's now over to you. So please use the chat. You can see, if option A, if you thought Kim was a miss, and the last one, the Kit Kat's a miss, then you choose option A. Just punch in the number, the alphabet with a corresponding answer that you think is the correct one. And yes, and then we'll see. So yeah, fastest fingers first. I know Sneh was helping there in the background with checking the answers, and I can see there is some answers coming through. Okay, great. Right. Ah, okay. I see it. A's coming through, some D's. There's number 2. Okay, number 2 being B. Okay, so it's A, B, D. I see coming through. Oh, I'll give it 1 more minute. I know maybe I caught you off guard that I need to pull you in to answer a question, but the book is up for grabs. There is something up for grabs. And thank you for those who's answering and participating. Really great to see. Thank you for doing that. So to give you the answers, to tell you what we saw and what happened out there. Let me switch over. So if you said, oh, sorry, there we go. You said Kim is a miss, you would be 100% correct. This this ad, Kim is Kim, right? She's a big brand in herself. I know what we saw, it's not really new or unique, what she's telling us. For people like me, it didn't perform really well. There was something that's missing there, right? To connect with people. And later in the presentation, I will also touch upon the use of celebrities and the impact they have. Then the Pigataro pineapple pen example from Kit Kat, and this was run on TikTok in Japan. If you said this one is a misfit, you would be 100% correct. It did exceptionally well in Japan, and things that really went well in this ad, Kit Kat in Japan, they partnered with Pigataro. I mean, he's a celebrity, he's a comedian in Japan. He became famous in, I think it's 2016, with the Pineapple Pen song that he's got playing in the background as he's doing his performance piece now. And they leveraged that. I mean, and he's dressed in the same way, behaving the same way. So they leveraged that momentum because he really went viral in Japan with it. Maybe many of us on the call known and seen him at TikTok or somewhere on YouTube at some point. But they really used that fame and more importantly, the understanding of their target audience and the understanding of the touch point being TikTok, what they use, with a relevant message to introduce the double flavored Kit Kat in Japan. And flavors in Japan is really a big thing. And the brand saw enormous success. We have the quote from Oliver. They saw a 40% growth in sales. So really, it captured people's attention. People were entertained by the idea, and they were rewarded, right? So again, it is really something that we speak about in Misfits, but it's also about what Effie's narrative is as well. Create strategy and creative work that focus on effectiveness, and they really did well in this regard. So looking into what we saw last year and what made campaigns really work and really work well, it's bringing in something that Danny mentioned in his video as well, which is so great and touches upon the 4 pillars of how the entries are structured. But it's also, if you think about those entries and the way the pillars are structured, it really speaks about the pillars of effective advertising, because you need to speak about understanding the business objectives, um, working on the insights and the idea, bringing the strategy to life, and the overall creative idea. And on those pillars is the way we structured the 2023 report, and also it's also informed our way of sharing the report and learnings that we have today. And what we could see is a key learning is around creativity that conforms to category conventions really suffer from cognitive immunity. So in South Africa, we really saw the winners challenge the norms. They much more than the entrants. The golds in the presentation that you see in the presentation now and throughout the presentation is always the winners, and then in the gray black box that's versus the entrants. But we also see this in our Ipsos database. If you look on the right, that breaking category conventions is really great for brand attention. So from our database as well, we see there's a 21% shift in a stronger performance by capturing people's experience with giving them something that's new and different. And this learning is also something that we see reflected in our global base of the best learnings from last year as well. And just to give you an idea, global base of the best only represent work that achieved gold or grand Effie winning status. It's only those winning cases that make it into global base of the best. And here you can also see, we see an 83% of those entrants challenged norms. So it's really about facing the challenges, like challenging the norms to stand out, to make an impact, to have brand attention, and to cut through. And what we see in South Africa last year with the entrants was, the focus was really on challenging and understanding the context, but the objectives the business had was really around quantifiable business metrics, to increase share of mind, campaign reach, acquisition. So we can see penetration there, 50%. So really, winners were really intentional about what they want to do with the campaigns, and what are the quantifiable measures that they want to walk away with to measure success of their campaign. And just in terms of the context, if we think of the context in South Africa, we know South Africa, there's many challenges, right? We refer to it as the poly crisis, because there's in the globe, there's one war next to the next. In South Africa, it's load shedding, it's water, there's so many things. And if we can see, just if we look to the left, 89% of people in South Africa think the country is heading in the wrong direction. 69% cite unemployment as their main concern. So really, people in South Africa, and this is data and from research we Ipsos did in South Africa last year. So you can see there's really a negative sentiment that consumers are facing, and and in a context that's really challenging. Price inflations, cost of living is really increasing. And what we saw, a great example, and it's a case study that we featured in the report, that a brand that really did well, a campaign that did really well, is the one from Woolworths. And what made this campaign so great is that they really demonstrated a deep understanding of the client's objectives, but also understanding what the perceptions are of shoppers, and also the challenges shoppers are facing, cost of living, and all of these difficult things that we are facing now. And in understanding how consumers are thinking, they also had to understand what is the brand standing for and the brand value. And it was really about helping the brand rebuild value around the value perception that Woolworths can offer in everyday grocery shopping. And they really integrated that very well, that rebranded messaging about rebuilding value around their tactical and all their communication touch points. And it really delivered the results. As you can see, over 200,000 extra additional shoppers that they saw. So really, again, understanding the business objectives but also empathy and understanding for the context in which your consumers operate in and the way they shop. Really brought it together quite nicely. And I'm going to show you an example from the Effie Best of the Best from last year. And this one is for Kia. And what's also great about this example is also, again, the brand taking an understanding of what is the context of their consumer and how and their shopping behavior. How do they shop? So I'm going to show you that one now.
In El Salvador, everything is sold on buses. Everything.
Material didáctico, mire, $1 le cuesta.
Manzana de la dulce, $1, manzana.
Ya parece un mercado aquí en el bus.
So, to sell the new Kia Picanto, a compact car with a very, very low monthly fee, we decided to do exactly the same. Kia presents the first car showroom inside a bus. We exhibited the car around the city. A salesman calculated what passengers spend on bus and taxi tickets per month and compared it with the car's monthly fee. And the numbers were almost the same.
Para vender el nuevo Kia Picanto se les ocurrió la sorprendente idea de meterlo adentro de un bus.
El primer car showroom dentro de un bus.
Un excelente día para todos los que viajan en bus.
Si aquí todo el mundo quisiera tener carro.
Was a better deal to buy the Kia Picanto. For the first time in brand's history, we run out of stock.
A ver si no los dejan sin trabajo.
Kia Picanto fits everywhere, even in your budget.
A great one, right? So in the category it did win for was for the ones with the smallest budgets. But again, as I touched on, it really spoke about understanding your consumer context. How do they shop? How do they behave? Understanding, what are those tension points? And that leads us really into the next point around nurturing creatives. How do we nurture our creatives and our strategy to be really impactful? And what we know and what we see, you've seen now as well, that from the results, that average does not impact brand equity, right? And the interesting thing that we have seen at Ipsos is that brand equity continues to drive 64% of customer choices. So it's really about the point of understanding your consumer, getting into their context, build that context within the environment, the insight within that context, with our understanding of the context, refining that insight, show the purpose of your brand, the value of your brand can bring, and bring distinctive. So it really, it starts early in the process. That's also one of the things that we see in Ipsos, is that creative development that's happening at much earlier at the stage of research is far more impactful. You can see this data point on 48%. So for creatives that got optimized early in the process, they were evaluated and measured and optimized throughout the process. By the time they air on market, they are 48% stronger in short-term sales versus those ideas that were not optimized at any stage. And then what we see from our global learnings and from the global base of the Effies as well, is that 73% really conduct research. They really have invested in the process of exploring their ideas, again, understanding the consumer and the context at an earlier stage, taking those ideas back to the consumers, evaluating and optimizing as it goes. And what we saw from the results from South Africa is the brands and agencies, they do not do as much research in the early stage as in other markets. What we see happen in South Africa from the entrants and the winners, there's really a focus in retrospective data in that once the campaigns are launched, people tend to look at brand health tracking data, to look at how campaigns are performing, if they're on track, and they use that as a measure for it, for effectiveness. And what we see in contrast to Effie UK, they're doing, as you can see, they did, at least the winners, they 47% of them did focus groups. You can see 20% did a lot of copy testing, and they also did use tracking. And this finding from the UK, it's actually very similar because we see it also in other European markets, and also in a market like the USA. We see that the winners in those markets tend to use a lot of qualitative research, focus groups at the early stage. So they've really invested in that process of understanding really early on how things are performing. And what we know from the Ipsos database is that we see that ideas that are evaluated and optimized much early in the process, they are more emotive, they are more distinctive, and overall, there's a stronger overall effectiveness in those ideas. And an idea that we really like to look at and refer to is an idea from Bright Armor. In South Africa, it won the Grand Effie, and Bright Armor was the only South African entrant that went also on to the Global Best of the Best award as a contender. And really, this idea, it's such a unique journey to see how the brand has transitioned and positioned itself over the last 5 years. I remember Carling Black Label, they started a few years ago with a bold, brave, strong campaign about how men and speaking around toxic masculinity, how men can use their power for greater good. And, and moving in that tonality and in that space the brand is speaking to, with Bright Armor, they really tackled intimate partner violence. And if you've seen this idea, there's really beautiful pieces already on the internet and that the brand has put out around it, but there's really shocking statistics around it, with 1 in 3 women facing violence each day. And what happened with this campaign, it reached over 38 million people, and it increased 75% of women are more likely to report intimate partner violence. And what was really great, it was great to see the team, the agency's Ogilvy, and I read and I saw a great piece from Neo speaking about, it really reflected Ogilvy's commitment to crafting impactful initiatives that are strategic and aligned to drive meaningful change. And again, it really speaks again about being intentional on effectiveness on your campaigns. That is a really great example. Have a look at it. And speaking about women and women representation, what we do see is the representation, the depiction of women remains a work in progress. What we know, earlier I mentioned the GEM score, which was the gender equality measure developed by See Her and the female quotient, is positive female representation and depiction has a direct impact on business and business end results, where and again, this comes from validated studies, that it's got a 24% impact on short-term sales and 28% lift in long-term relationships. And so there's a lot of speak around doing good for the world is also doing good for business. And there's something that rings true around it. Brands have the power to shift perceptions and have a role to play into contributing to social good in society. And what we see is, brands in the global base of the best, over 46% of them also featured women in the primary role. But if you look at the data point there, but only 5% showed women in defining roles and defying stereotypes. And it really speaks to the main insight around it remains a work in progress. So although we use women and represent women and, are more conscious about the depiction of women, there's still some work to be done in how we actually doing it. You know, and that's for us as in the industry, it's something that we need to work on and need to think on. And, you know, I briefly touched on it that I mentioned, you know, doing social good is good for business. And speaking about, you know, you saw the positive shifts in short-term sales and long-term equity with the positive representation of women. It also brings me to the conversation around, you know, bringing your ideas to life and investment. And what we see is big budgets is not a guarantee of success. We see this, especially in South Africa. The report definitely revealed what, you know, this point. So for those people who think, you know, we need to go and get a big budget, you know, it is not the answer, because even smaller campaigns with a focus on being effective are just as impactful, and they do win campaigns, and they do win awards, and they do achieve their business end objectives. And what we can see in this graph here is something interesting in that, you know, the results on the 6% on the 8%, that is a shift from 2023 to this year. So the gold winners last year, their budgets for under 5 million increased with 6%. And for those with budgets of over 5 million, it increased with 5%. But if you look at the lower end, the entrants, you know, year on year, they increased their budgets with 16%, but they are entrants. So, you know, it really speaks to, you know, being strategic with your budget, your touch points, where you're spending it, because again, really the big budget is not a guarantee of success. And a great example that we featured in the report as well is the Amnesty International case study. This was submitted by Joe Public. A really awesome case study. When you have a time, like, have a look in the report. But what worked really well is, you know, understanding the clients, being an NGO, they don't really have the largest budget to spend on advertising. So they needed to be intentional about the messaging and strategic on how they approach it. And what the brand did and the teams did, they approached Love Life, you know, Love Life's leading woman magazine, for limited edition, which they called The Real Maternity Issue. And it's really to draw attention to underage teenage pregnancy in South Africa. And in an environment that's really cluttered with negative information, there can be a lot of noise. And some of these shocking statistics and realities of these girls, you know, once they get pregnant, they actually don't go back to school. And from there, you know, it impacts their employment. So they get caught up in this cycle of unemployment and poverty. So it was really intentional about how do we bring this to the forefront. And in one of the tactics and used in this as well is, with this publication, they targeted specific journalists, influential figures, to earn extra coverage and opportunities for national exposure. And this really did very well for the campaign. They did get a lot of airtime. It was shared and reshared, and it really captured the audience, the South Africans' audience attention, because this also happened during Women's Month. So it's really, again, that understanding of a relevant message, right audience, right touch point, and it's super impactful. Another case study that also really, you know, speaks to understanding, you know, your audience and speaking around positioning the brand. Earlier we spoke about Woolworths and the shopper behavior and repositioning their value perception. In this instance, you know, Milk Style is really anchored in, you know, it's known for its role in tradition and culture. And the objective was how to create fame for the modern South Africa and how to create modern availability. And the way they approached it was with a TV talk series. And what was interesting was then the use of, you know, continuing the conversations off air on X to keep that engagement going. And it was really, it was a very sensitive topic, but also, very risky, to talk about blackness, between consumers and opinion leaders. And, they achieved great results. They became the dominant media. They achieved great share of voice, one of the most watched shows on air as well. So really, again, understanding, not necessarily having the biggest budget, but, understanding your audience, the insight, and continuing that engagement with them, to keep it ongoing even after the TV show aired. And what we see in South Africa, and we see this in other markets as well, speaking of touch points, that TV remains the main touch point. I know there's many conversations that I'm sure many of us hear around social touch points and social media, but TV is still leading. And this we see also in other markets, the US and also the UK. The winners tend to use TV as a touch point. What we also saw from our research last year is that winners tend to use more touch points, and gold tend to incorporate more touch points. And that is also something very interesting that we actually found from the global Effie reports as well. More winners tend to use more touch points. And again, it's using the relevant message to the relevant audience on the relevant touch point. And what we saw is as well, gold winners in South Africa, they tend to use more social points, where just winners would use Facebook and Instagram as their primary touch point. So it's really around that integration of, the relevant touch points for your audience. And something that we see our KitKat friend as well, Facebook from global perspective, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X are really the platforms of choice for the global based of the best entrants and contenders. And what we see is, the TikTok, there's a huge growth in the last year from 12% to 36% in the global entries. So people are really focusing on using the different touch points in their campaigns. And speaking of touch points, what was really interesting, considering and understanding your audience, what we saw from VW, this is their campaign for Game On. They really understood, their audience and the touch points they use, because, the younger generations, the Gen Zs, they are notorious for using ad blockers or skipping and scrolling past. So we did feature this one in our case study as well in the report. But what they really did well was create content that was highly relevant and relatable to them. And at this point, what was relevant and relatable to the audience was NFTs, cryptocurrencies, the metaverse, the gaming. So they really, touch on consumers' touch points to drive engagement and capture their attention with relevant messaging and on the right platform. And you can see the results there on the left. They really saw great sales, and the campaign really did well. I'm going to share with you another example of a global best of the best entry and winner, and they were the winner for social media, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's a really super cool one.
Hi everyone! Today I'm gonna show you how I became the biggest virtual influencer in the world.
Magalu, Brazil's biggest retailer, believes that brands need to become creators to avoid being disadvantaged on social platforms. That's why Magalu turned Lu, its virtual assistant created in 2003, into its virtual influencer. In recent years, Magalu has invested and boosted her career, making her a celebrity of pop culture. Last year, she was unstoppable and reached the top. She performed in a real-life music video with Anitta, And every outfit in the video was sold out on our app. She was featured in a virtual world clip with DJ Alaki and sold out all the items used in the clip. She was also live on TV shows with Fortnite's cutting-edge technology. She's been hired and created content for some of the world's greatest brands, being the first virtual personality ever designed by Red Bull's official illustrator. She stole the show in the fashion world by being on the cover of Vogue magazine. She's also done a lot of amusing activities, especially dancing, and she danced a lot. Her engagements and reach numbers are off the charts. People don't simply follow her, they love her. Her success is driving meaningful engagement with our brand throughout her social channels, and she's becoming an important asset to our company.
That's a great one, right? So, it's really interesting. Originally she started out as the voiceover in the stores in 2003, and it really just has developed into where it is now. And it's great to hear that, they refer to as a brand asset and part of the brand story and narrative. So in the double best of the best in the social media category, this is one that it won that category. So speaking of touch points and social media and things, do we see, or say that social media is the end answer to all? We saw Kit Kat and Nestle and all of that, and the answer is no. We're not just saying it's social media only is the answer. What we're saying is you need to focus on your content and the touch point that you use. So optimizing for the right touch point is really key, because the message for linear TV, it's not just going to cut across all on your social media, on social feed or skippable content. You really need to cater to your content, to your channel. And the ways of doing that, just as they mentioned, Lou from Magalu, she's a brand asset. One of the things that you can leverage is your distinctive assets. What we see is distinctive assets are a driving force for creative effectiveness. From our database, we can see, when you use your distinctive assets, you have 57% stronger brand attention. So, it's one of those things to keep in mind. And what we saw from the winners last year, they really did it well as well. You can see our gold winners, 83% and 89%. They really made sure that they embed their brand, their logo, and they really did well, because, you don't want to cut through and then people can't remember you in the name of your brand, right? And one way of helping to capture attention that we saw, and what we saw locally and globally, is humor. Humor can drive emotional engagement and really help brands break through and notice and remember. So we can see, 43% of the global base of the best, they used humor in their ads. And even in South Africa, we also saw, humor being used by 61% of gold winners. They incorporated humor. So, so it's really a great tool to drive engagement. An idea that I'll quickly speak about that was really great. Also, again, it's in our case study, but Chakalaka Norris, I mean, his spicy personality, I don't think we can't escape that. But, it really worked really well for both brands. I mean, Savannah, they wanted to create, awareness and drive sales around their new variant. And, then they know for, they played around that spiciness that South African and the Africanisms are being known for, being fiery, having, a little bit of attitude. And then they also collaborated with Nando's. And Nando's is also known for, the tonality of their ideas, right? With humor and being spicy and they're being on the mark. So really a great, ad, bringing in your distinctive assets, your tonality, what you're known for, and bring it all together. And it brings us to a point around celebrities. Earlier I said I will bring in the conversation around Kim as well. And what we know is, you know, just like we talked about, big budgets is not the guarantee to success. You know, celebrities is also not your key to success. You know, they can help to capture brand attention, but if you put all your eggs in one basket and think they're gonna be the magic ingredient that makes the magic happen, it is sadly not the case. You know, they can help get attention, but you know, to transition into brand linkage and behavior change, it's normally not that effective. And what we see from global and even in other markets like the US, and we know the US, they really enjoy having their celebrities as spokesperson. Only 16% of them used celebrities. You know, and in South Africa, we saw winners last year, only 6% used a celebrity, you know, in their campaign. But when they did use them, there was a logical connection between them and their brand. And that's one of the key things that you need to keep in mind when you do use a celebrity. Is there a logical link between you and your brand and bringing it all together? So just to quickly recap what we spoke about today, and, you know, on your journey of, you know, embracing effectiveness and thinking about, you know, the campaigns you're working on, the clients you're working on, it's really around being confident in embracing a misfit, you know, challenge category norms, you know, give people experiences of something new and different, and show value when you do that. Understand your context, your business objectives, what you want to achieve, then bring in the insights and the strategy, bring it all together, nurture it with research, tasting it, making sure it resonates and it's relevant. And then, you know, in terms of the budget, you know, bring it to your audience on a relevant touch point that is impactful to them. And as I'm saying that, I can see the timing is really running out of us. I don't know if there's any questions. I didn't see anything in the chat, but if you've got any questions for us or comments, like, that would be great to hear from you.
Thanks so much, Quentin. I think that was really interesting, and we will share a copy of the full report and this deck to everybody on the call. I think when you go through the report, there's, you know, a lot of the things Quentin has spoken through, but there's a lot more that's also extremely interesting. So we will share that with you. There was a question in the chat about how to access the best of the best, the global cases, and there is a link. If you go to your to the chat thing, there is a link that takes you through to the case library and the published cases. I think the latest cases are still 2022. Unfortunately, they're still in the process of adjudicating the 2023 global best of the best. So go there. There are other cases that you can find on that website. And thank you very much to Ipsos. And if there are any questions, please feel free to contact either Snare or myself or Quentin, and we wish you a happy day further.
It's happy day. Thank you for joining us. Till next time.
Thanks,
and then
everybody.
just one last thing, we'll be in touch with all of the winners in due course.
Yes.
Your books will be arriving on feathered wings. So
it's coming your way. It's coming. Yes.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Quentin. Thanks, Snare. Thank you.
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Thanks for joining.
We'll speak soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.